This video is brought to you by Nebula and TLDR's Race Across Europe. Japan's demographic crisis is bad, and things are getting worse. Births are falling, the population is aging and in decline, to the point that Japan, in the words of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, is on the brink of not being able to maintain its societal functions. In this video, we'll take you through the latest data, explain why the crisis is so bad, and look at the government's plan to fix it. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Let's get straight into the data. The key metric here is the fertility rate, which is the average number of children a woman gives birth to in her lifetime. Generally speaking, a total fertility rate of around 2.1 children per woman is the level needed to maintain a stable population, though obviously things like migration and mortality rate also have an impact on this. Anyway, Japan's fertility rate is low. In fact, recently released data from the country's health ministry for 2022 put Japan's fertility rate at just below 1.26, down from 1.3 the year before. The new figure dips below the previous record low from 2005. In terms of the raw numbers of births, 2022 saw the lowest figure since authorities began tracking the data in 1899. The number of births fell 5% to just over 770,000, marking the first ever fall below 800,000, a milestone reached 8 years earlier than previously expected. This long-term and continuing decline in birth rate, as well as Japan's relatively restrictive immigration rules, has seen the country's population decline for 12 years straight now. The current population of around 125 million is projected to fall to 87 million by 2070. In addition to declining overall, Japan's population is also aging, thanks to its low birth rates and the longevity of Japanese people who have one of the world's highest life expectancies. Japan actually has a median age of 49, the second highest in the world, behind only Monaco, which has its own unique demographics. Now, it's worth taking a moment to actually explain why this is bad news for Japan. Japan is seeing its older population grow as a proportion of its total population, while the proportion taken up by younger people shrinks. In other words, the workforce is shrinking. Now, there obviously is more to life than just working, producing, and paying taxes. But in a capitalist system, it's not good for productivity and economic growth if there's a persistent shortage of workers. Especially when, at the same time, you have an increasingly elderly population that requires more and more spending on things like social security, healthcare, and more. Japan already saw its working age population fall by 13.9% from 1995 to 2021, and from 2020 to 2040, it's forecast to shrink by a further 20%. This is seriously concerning for businesses in the country. According to a recent Reuters poll of nearly 500 major companies in Japan, 94% said they feel a sense of crisis over the falling birth rate. This sense of crisis is something felt not just by businesses, but by government too. This is because a low fertility rate means less working-age people relative to pensioners, which means you have to tax workers more to maintain public services, especially public healthcare. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said at the beginning of the year that the nation is on the brink of not being able to maintain its societal functions, adding that it's now or never when it comes to policies regarding births and child rearing. It's an issue that simply cannot wait any longer. So, what is the government actually going to do about it? The government has announced plans to increase its funding for childcare by around 3.5 trillion yen, which is around $25.2 billion per year for the next 3 years. Under the current child allowance system, parents are entitled to 15,000 yen, or roughly $107 per month, for each child under the age of 3. For children from the age of 3 to 15, parents can receive 10,000 yen per month. The government's proposal is to extend this so that children from 15 to 18 can benefit and also scrap the household income cap for the allowance. Additionally, they want to give double the amount of money given to parents with 3 or more children to 30,000 yen per head per month. The government also wants to open up daycare centres and nursery places to children regardless of the employment status of their parents. All of these measures are designed to help potential parents overcome the financial barrier to having children. After all, the high cost of living and raising children, coupled with 3 years of wage stagnation, are one of the main reasons why people simply aren't having many or any children. So, will all this be successful in halting the decline in birth rates? Well, we don't know. For what it's worth, the business community doesn't have much faith in the government to solve the crisis. In that Reuters poll we mentioned earlier of 500 major companies, just 14% said they were hopeful that the government's measures would work, while 34% said they wouldn't. And there's good reason to be sceptical. Fumio Kishida's government isn't the first that's taken on the birth rate challenge. Trying to reverse the decline was a major project of Shinzo Abe when he was Prime Minister. But similar policies aimed at lifting the financial burden of having children have evidently done little to turn things around. That's because the issue isn't purely financial, but also cultural and societal. For many Japanese women, there is a justified concern that the burden of having and raising children will fall disproportionately on them and damage or even end their careers. The government has at least sort of recognised this and aims to increase the percentage of new fathers taking paternity leave to 50% by 2025 and 85% by 2030. The proposals we've discussed are largely for implementation from the next financial year onwards, so the government will continue to develop them throughout this year. Plus, there's the question of how these things will be funded, which is a whole other political debate in the country. But in general, critics say the proposed measures are mostly about putting additional money into existing schemes and do not address the underlying problems, including gendered parenting roles, corporate culture, and more. Nevertheless, Japan's crusade to get people to have children will be watched and assessed by countries around the world, not just because of the implications for Japan as a country, but also because the decline in birth rates is something that's happening in many other countries around the world. There's also some other huge news, by the way. We've just launched our new series, TLDR's Race Across Europe. Take a look.
To celebrate the 10,000th order from the TLDR merch store, we committed to hand-delivering orders to a bunch of real TLDR fans. So, we split into 3 teams, assigned points to each delivery location on the map, and let teams try to score as many points as they could in just 30 hours. The problem? Well, only one team is allowed to make each delivery, and any team which doesn't make it to the location of the 10,000th order by the end of the game is disqualified. Welcome to TLDR's Race Across Europe.
I'm a speed demon now.
Why is British transport the worst?
Oh no!
I'm going to be fuming if they beat us this one.
Zach is obviously thinking, he's like, nah, Ben's not a threat, nah, you know?
It can look like it is when we lose.
Have you spoken to any other teams? Guys, it's not looking good.
And thank you for ruining our journey.
This is the worst thing that could have happened.
And I wouldn't put it past him, he's a spiteful little...
What? What do you mean? What? How does that happen? We've come through some kind of police barricade.
Genuinely very much an open question as to whether or not Jack gets back to the UK anytime soon.
Yeah.
It was within an hour.
That's not possible. Did you have a ticket? Who's got the tickets? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Now, you can watch the first episode on the TLDR EU channel right now, but we're also releasing every subsequent episode a week early on Nebula. So if you're a Nebula subscriber, you can watch the first 2 episodes right now, totally ad-free. That's true of all TLDR content, by the way. We regularly release our videos on Nebula before they come to YouTube, and everything's ad-free, so not even this advert is here. It's not just the race either. Every week, TLDR produces well over an hour's worth of content, which is exclusively for Nebula. That's exclusive discussions where our team share their thoughts on the latest stories, extended daily briefings, our Nebula series This Week in Parliament, and even full explainers. So if you want the full TLDR experience, you really ought to be on Nebula. Sign up now using our link in the description to get everything the platform has to offer for just £2 a month.